It's time for Spiritual Awakening Radio. My name is James Bean of spiritualawakeningradio.com. Most of the time I begin each program, each podcast, by mentioning my website, as it is a place with many resources. There is a Sant Mat introductory page. There is an Anurag Sagar section, if you're familiar with that particular book, that particular spiritual classic of the Sant tradition, the Anurag Sagar, Kabir's Ocean of Love. Links to my e-library, blogs, various podcast sites, YouTube, and so on. spiritualawakeningradio.com. Today, the genuine spiritual master in search of the competent and qualified teacher, a Sant Satguru. In the past, I've mentioned that the disciple can be genuine even if the guru is not. But how much nicer to have the positive influence of a good teacher in one's life and satsang discourses in the language that we understand. And if you're listening to this podcast, that language most likely is English. Some satsang talks, some literature to read, some satsang videos to watch, some satsangs to attend, or spiritual retreats. Some positive influences really helps a lot when it comes to this spiritual path. So, a competent spiritual master, a qualified teacher, a complete saint, is extremely helpful, serving as a catalyst to help our spiritual progress. The Guru verification process, this is from a book of Kabir Ethics, the Kabir 1008 Vani, from the Sakis of Guru Kabir. Satguru Kabir warns everyone and says, one should make someone his guru only after thorough verification about him. One should drink water only after filtering, in order to save oneself from contamination. One who adopts a master without making proper verification about him has to remain continuing in the 84 lack modes of existence of living beings in this world. In other words, transmigration. If someone makes someone his master without any verification about him, and that guru turns out to be false and cunning, how could that unqualified teacher bring fulfillment to the ultimate aim of his disciples' life? Asks Kabir. Kabir 1008 Vani, from the Sakis of Guru Kabir. No guru bling factor. Someone from India once asked, don't you think this materialistic world is dragging us down? And I think our elders have had a much better life than us, unquote. My reply is as follows. That is indeed a major concern for Western countries, but in India also. The spiritual teachers from India I respect the most and see as being authoritative and genuine live in fairly rural areas. They don't craft messages designed to appeal to large crowds of followers from the West for the sake of numbers or status. They are simply carrying on their spiritual tradition without being corrupted by a desire for name and fame. They have an abundance of spiritual wealth and wisdom to offer, but not so much earthly wealth, no fleet of Porsches or Rolls Royces parked in their driveways. Masks of spirituality. This is from the commentary of Santji, Ajib Singh, his commentary on the Asadhivar of Guru Nanak in the book The Palace of Love. Those who are false from within but who outwardly show honor, they are only show-offs in the world. That's a quote from Guru Nanak, commentary by Santji. Guru Nanak says, such people may be able to impress the people of the world, but they cannot deceive God Almighty, who is sitting within them. Even if we are able to deceive others, we can never deceive God Almighty because He is sitting within us. A quote from In the Palace of Love. This is an ode to the Sant Satguru I wrote several years back during a particular Guru Purnima, which is an Indian holy day commemorating teachers, including spiritual teachers. The Ode to the Sant Satguru. In praise of the Sant soul of love who has reached the spiritual realm above and merged in God. Hail to the competent living master, the qualified teacher, rare to find in this world, so few and far between. A true one, a genuine mentor of souls, righteous and worthy guide, a fearless being, a light giver, leader of a spiritual community. With gratitude to the competent living one, in a sea of samsara, illusion, and world of changes, of falsehood and posing, there is a bright light in the darkness. A silent music becomes audible at the feet of such a loving, radiant one. The soul cannot help but find inner light and slip into deep samadhi meditation. In the eyes of a saint are love, wisdom, light, compassion, grace, a reflection of God in this realm of the material plane. The master power connects the soul with the Supreme, Lord of Love. My Guru Purnima Ode to the Living One, the Sant Satguru. You'll find that in the Sikh scriptures, the Adi Granth or Guru Granth Sahib, that the job description of the living master is the one who connects the soul with the Supreme Being. So in the Adi Granth, there's some, of course, reference to the master, but there are many, many, many references, in fact, putting the focus upon the Supreme Being, because the role of the Satguru is to connect the soul to the Supreme Being. So that is the focus. A Godward focus is the type of focus that one should be expecting. This is from the great song of Mani. Mani, Buddha, Christ, you freed souls from samsara and ignorance and gave wisdom from the Gnostic prophet Mani. Unendingly submerged in the dust of forgetting rebirths and in a state of poisonous, savage animals, they were always mad. When the passion of greed poisoned them and they were dying, you prepared a medicine for them from the herb of meditation. You freed from ignorance and gave wisdom. They raved in the passion of anger. They lacked sense or coherent thought. And yet you assembled their thoughts. And so they understood their origin in the realm of light. Those living beings in the 5 states of existence, you freed from ignorance and gave them wisdom, leading them to Parinirvana, the realm of light. Many differing passions, hatred, and bitterness troubled these thinking beings, and scattered their thoughts. But, Holy Father, when you descended from the sky, the families of all thinking beings reached the peace of nirvana. You rescued them from samsara. We who are miserable and with no hope would have stayed in the torture of samsara, not finding the end of your path. You set up the ladder of wisdom. You let us supersede the 5 forms of being, and you delivered us. We who were fettered in suffering were rescued from rebirth to see the Buddha-like sun god, who is like you. For those tied to transitory pleasure, you taught the true law. You carried them across the ocean of suffering to the good nirvana. For those tied to the root of attachment to the world, you revealed the road to the realm of the Buddhas. You raised a Sumeru mountain of virtue. You let them find endless happiness. For those plunged into the water of pride, you showed the bridge of the true law. You took understanding of the good law into their hearts. You entrusted them to the Holy Assembly for those confused by the 6 organs of perception. You showed the rising and falling states of being. You revealed what is the suffering of those in the deepest Buddha hell. You let them be reborn in the blessed 5-fold heaven of light. Look for the ways of salvation. You crossed the lands, going to every side. When you found humans needing salvation, you rescued all. Some mystic poetry from the Gnostic prophet Mani, or Mani, associated with Manichaeism in Persia and along the Silk Road. Coming up next, eavesdropping on Hathras, some teachings from the Tulsi Sahib Satsang about complete saints, genuine Mahatmas, true masters, what it is they impart for teachings to their disciples. From my booklet, Eavesdropping on Hathras, Rare Teachings in English, from the Tulsi Sahib Satsang, Hathras Mandir. Hathras is located about 20 minutes south of Agra, not too far from Agra. Complete Mahatmas, genuine saints, came to the world in their respective times and kept on emancipating the living beings who were connected with them, associated with them. On completion of their time, they left the body as per the will of the Lord and went to the Lord, leaving their work, their spiritual mission, to the other saints when departing. Unquote. So they leave spiritual successors as they pass on and pass the torch of spirituality on to the next generation, and so on and so on, and it's always been this way. Back to the text. Actually, God appears through the medium of the master, the guru, so we have to search for a living master. Complete and imperishable, permanent benefit is available only through the living guru. In him is the magnetic power of the great consciousness, of the dynamic consciousness, the touch of which creates power in us and connects our soul to the current of the word, Atma Ko Shabda, that rises to the spiritual plane. She, the sound current, helps us by being with our organs. The Shabad, the sound current, is the vital life force of the body. Very fortunate is that soul who takes shelter of such a supreme saint. Initiation into Surat Shabad Yoga, inner light and sound meditation. The Jiva Atma, the soul, being given the Shabda, is the first stage of Guru Bhakti. One does Guru Bhakti by following his instructions, in other words, doing the meditation practice. Back to the text. Only with the grace of the Master, the knowledge of the path of Nam is obtained, unquote. From my PDF file, Eavesdropping on Hathras, Rare Teachings in English from the Tulsi Sahib Satsang of Hathras. I literally took Hindi text and ran it through Google Translate a few times and a couple of other online translators as well to actually extract that from Hindi to turn it into English just to see what the teachings are in Hathras. And I was very impressed that they're still preserving traditional Sant Mat from an Indian perspective. At this stage, many generations of masters since the time of Sant Tulsi Sahib of Hathras. Nice to see that. As with other lineages of masters, they are very clear that one benefits from the living guru when they're in the body. So on this path of Sant Mat, one does not take initiation from someone who passed on in the 1980s or the 1940s or the 1840s or some past saint or mystic, but one is initiated by a living master and receives the life impulse from that living teacher and is mentored by that living teacher. An accomplished living teacher. Saints and sages have unveiled all the mysteries of the spiritual journey and of self-realization in their discourses. All the techniques have been documented in the books, but without an accomplished teacher, we will not be able to understand the correct technique of true knowledge just by reading. The appropriate spiritual teacher should be a person who has considered and discovered the realities of Atma and Anatma, bondage and liberation, and who practices the spiritual path. Such a teacher should have attained direct experience of truth through spiritual disciplines. Just pausing here, in other words, they themselves have experienced that which they teach. They're not just an inheritor of a throne or a title or a turban, but are actually a mystic themselves that are coming from that Sachkhand level. In other words, they are the embodiment of the spirituality that they preach and teach. Back to the text. This is the teacher you should take instruction from. The grace of the teacher is also necessary for success in the spiritual pursuit. When you learn the methods for inner meditation, you should practice diligently. Moral rectitude is also very essential in this pursuit. What I just read is from the book The Harmony of All Religions, authored by Sri Sant Seviji Maharaj of the Maharshi Mehi ashram. Of spiritual discourses. instruction in the language that one understands. Hearing spiritual discourses awakens devotion, creates dispassion, and breaks the hold of desires. Hearing discourses, the heart is purified, resolve is strengthened, and the misery of ego is broken. Hearing discourses builds determination and allows us to abandon attachments. It clears fears and doubts and transforms faults of character. Listening to satsang discourses, the mind feels contentment and cuts its attachment to the body. Listening to the discourses awakens positive thoughts and clear thinking. The mind asks for these of the Lord. It keeps bad company away, diminishes lust, and erases worries in a moment. It gives spiritual insight and tranquility. Listening to satsang discourses creates detachment and secures our place on the path of God. Where there is no spiritual discourse, the devotee should not stay a moment. Those without the benefit of discourses, what can they know of spirituality? Whatever they have done in the past is wasted if it's not listened to, if one has not listened to spiritual discourses. Whatever they have done in the past is wasted if they've not listened to discourses. Listen to satsang discourses and keep your mind in meditation. Cross the ocean of existence. We take food and water every day, so we should devote ourselves to hearing discourses again and again. Those who are lazy and disregard this advice surely undermine their own good. To be lazy is to drown spiritually. So listen to discourses regularly. Those are mystic verses from Samarth Ram Das, from his spiritual classic, the Das Bodh, a spiritual classic from Maharashtra. I believe Das Bodh means advice to the disciples. And Ram Das was one of those classic saints of Maharashtra, India, on the need for daily satsang, daily instruction, so we can escape our own regular thoughts and be reminded. It's not so much about learning as it is about remembrance and affirming what we already know, and to be reminded of our spiritual practice. And so we should be reminded on a regular basis. As Baba Ram Singh said a couple years back at a spiritual retreat, we cannot do or listen to satsang once in a fortnight or once a month, because our love and affection in the world outside is drawing us all the time. And if we want to get that love and affection towards our Master and towards God Almighty, then we have to bring it into our everyday life. A passage from Baba Ram Singh. Coming up next, Maharshi Mehi on the true Master, the true Sant Satguru, from his spiritual manual on Sant Mat called Philosophy of Liberation. Maharishi Mehi Paramahans from the Philosophy of Liberation, which is a spiritual manual published by Maharshi Mehi Ashram. It's kind of their Sarabachan prose, if you will, if you know what that means. Their key book, one of their key spiritual books of instruction on the path, what it is, how it works, how to benefit from it. Maharishi Mehi Paramahansa: the one who has purity of character, who practices diligently the yoga of sound, and who can explain clearly Sant Mat, the complete path of the masters with nothing missing, can be accepted and trusted as Satguru. The personal and private instruction in the art of this spiritual practice should be received from a Satguru, an accomplished spiritual master. Once the technique has been learned, one should practice it regularly and daily according to the instructions given by the master. The recognition of a true spiritual master is the most difficult of tasks. However, the one who has purity of character, or rectitude, who practices diligently the yoga of sound, and who can explain clearly Sant Mat, the path of saints, can be accepted and trusted and given devotion as a spiritual master. A person without rectitude or purity of character, regardless of the other qualities just mentioned, should not be regarded as a true master. If one has accepted a spiritual teacher and later finds out his or her lacking in moral rectitude, if one has accepted a spiritual teacher and later finds him or her lacking in rectitude, that teacher should be abandoned. In spite of the teacher's exquisite knowledge, association with that teacher is not desirable if he or she is lacking in moral character. Just pausing here. In the Western world, there are a lot of best-selling authors that write brilliant books. And so people assume that those that crank out a lot of books or popular books makes them a spiritual teacher. But no, not necessarily. They might be a good read, but don't let them babysit the kids. You know, in other words, they may know a lot of things and crank out books, but that alone is not a sign of someone being a true spiritual teacher. Just that word salad of an impressive book or a best-selling book as opposed to a not-so-best-selling book. That popularity or the contents of such a book or many books by itself is not something that makes someone a legitimate spiritual teacher. Maharishi Mehi: as the aspirant is particularly affected by the teacher's moral character, it is imperative to avoid teachers without moral virtues. Purity of character is the essential quality of a teacher, and if purity is lacking, that teacher is no better than an animal. A teacher lacking purity of character or other essential virtues is a false spiritual teacher. The fruits of accepting a true master are immense. Unfortunately, true teachers are few and difficult to find. A spiritual master who is wise, pure, and a practitioner himself or herself of the yoga of divine sound gradually imparts his or her virtues to the student. The goodwill of the spiritual teacher cannot but help affecting the aspirant in a positive manner because one is affected by the power of a higher vibration. Just pausing here. Here Maharishi Mehi is saying that beyond the words, beyond the guidance, beyond the wisdom being imparted, there are also subtle influences by the true teacher. And of course, there are also subtle influences by the dark teacher as well that pull you down and you don't know why. So there are subtle influences, he is saying, beyond the words, beyond the teaching. The teacher has other types of influences on a subtle or spiritual level. Maharishi Mehi, the master who practices the yoga of sound but is negligent in his moral character and in his spiritual knowledge is harmful to the seeker of spiritual knowledge. His spiritual knowledge is harmful to the seeker of spiritual knowledge. If one has accepted such a master, disregarding the importance of rectitude and knowledge, the aspirant would be deprived of the benefits of the association with a true preceptor, mentioned in the previous paragraph. In addition, in following an immoral teacher, the aspirant would have the difficult task of not going astray, much less advancing on the spiritual path. However, without the aid of a true teacher, this spiritual task can be undertaken by a few steadfast, learned disciples. For most, it is almost impossible to undertake this task. Just pausing. So here Maharishi Mehi is saying, it's not an easy spiritual path, even with a good teacher, and the subtle positive influences of that teacher, the grace of that teacher. But if one has a negative influence in one's life from a mediocre teacher or lesser teacher, man, that's dragging us down, and life is short, right? And that's taking up time and space in our life that could be devoted to following a Sant Satguru, a qualified teacher instead, to make use of this precious time we have in the human form. Maharishi Mehi, clearly the energy, physical and mental, of one person can enhance the same faculties of another person. Thus, it is not surprising that the spiritual power of one who is advanced in meditation enhances the spiritual energy of the disciple, the aspirant, the spiritual seeker. Baba Devi Sahib quotes the verses of Gat Ramayan, the Gat Ramayan of Sant Tulsi Sahib of Hathras, in which Sant Tulsi Sahib, in giving instruction to the aspirant, describes the importance of a true master. O Taki, O disciple, after being voracious and content, giving up the illusory enchantments of worldly things, go in the shelter of a perfect spiritual teacher who will give you the secret knowledge to get into the Shushumna Nadi, the door to internal spiritual experience. Further, Tulsi Sahib addresses the importance of the grace of a true master in the journey of God realization. Tulsi Sahib, or Tulsi Sahib, it has been said that without the supreme blessings of a perfect and true spiritual preceptor, detachment from the worldly is arduous. It is difficult to realize the truth and live in a state of realization of the Supreme. The worthiness of the service of a spiritual preceptor lies in the fact that the teacher offers such blessings to him, the aspirant, unquote. Maharishi Mehi, Lord Buddha no less instructs in his book the Dhammapada that an aspirant should serve the master from whom he learns the spiritual path. A disciple should serve the teacher from whom he learns the Dharma of Buddha diligently a paragraph on selfless service or seva. Baba Divi Sahib further quotes the Ghat Ramayan. This spiritual path and its destination is divine love, but it is not possible to reach it. The remover of difficulties is the one spiritual teacher before you who has given you the secret knowledge, the spiritual instruction, unquote. Maharishi Mehi Paramahansa, the saints and true teachers are known to be impartial. Their blessings fall like the rain. However, the rain, while falling on all, tends to collect in deep pools, just as the grace of the saints, while showering on all, flows rapidly and collects in the deep pools of the aspirants who are devoted. It is not surprising that the aspirants, through their devotion, draw the grace of the Master towards them. Aspirants who give great attention to the ways of the teacher are worthy of the gift of knowledge. Obviously, not the careless one, but the one who honors the gift and cares for the receiving bowl receives the gift of the grace of the teacher. Making one's self worthy is the secret of devotion to the Master, the way of gaining grace, as described in the teachings of the saints. Just pausing here. So up to now we've been talking about the worthiness of the Master, a true teacher, someone who actually practices meditation and experiences the inner planes and Sachkhand and is one with God, who is doing the teaching. But here, with this paragraph I just shared from Maharishi Mehi, the focus is the worthiness of the seeker to receive the knowledge, the influence, the instruction, the guidance, and to follow the meditation practice and to experience for themselves what's being described by the Master. So the worthiness of the disciple. Maharishi Mehi, the aspiration to serve with love and behave humbly before the teacher arises naturally in the hearts of students. Therefore, devotion to the spiritual teacher is also natural. To say anything against devotion to the teacher is pointless, and also the wise will not give devotion to an unworthy teacher and will influence other aspirants to do the same. The four essential elements a sadhaka, an aspirant of the spiritual path or disciple or chela, needs are the following. 1. Satsang, association of saints and hearing of things spiritual discourses. 2. Sadhakara, moral rectitude. 3. Guru seva, dedication to the teacher. And 4. Dhyan abhyasa, the practice of meditation. Those are passages from the Philosophy of Liberation, the book of Moksha Darshan, right? Vision of liberation, vision of salvation. You can also translate that as Moksha Darshan. A spiritual classic by Maharishi Mehi Paramahansa, published by Maharishi Mehi Ashram in the Tulsi Sahib lineage, one of the Tulsi Sahib lineages. Their Sarbachan prose, if you will, a key manual of the path. Baba Ram Singh, every day is an opportunity to meditate and study the teachings of the Masters. If we listen to satsang every day, and we do bhajan simran, if we do the meditation every day, then we will definitely get success on this path, and we will be fit for getting the grace of our Masters. This is from Kripal Singh. The third eye in meditation. This is very helpful if you've been struggling with the third eye. Because sometimes people, when they think of the third eye, they think of it in an external sort of way. They imagine this eye in their forehead or between the eyes, and they think of it from the outside point of view. But this passage from Sant Kirpal Singh gives you the perspective of finding the third eye from within, which is where you are at if you are successfully practicing meditation, following the instructions. The third eye in meditation: close your eyes as in sleep and look sweetly, lovingly, intently into the middle of the darkness lying in front of you. You will see a dark veil. That which sees the dark veil within, without the help of your physical eyes, is the inner eye, says Sant Kirpal Singh. The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. May my eye and God's eye be one eye, one seeing, one knowing, one love. The quote from Meister Eckhart, the German mystic from the Rhineland, part of the however you say it in German, the Friends of God movement from the Middle Ages. Meister Eckhart. Baba Ram Singh: saints come into this world and they enlighten us. They remind us of our true home, of God Almighty, our true Father. They encourage us to go back, and they motivate us to go back. So we are indeed fortunate to get this human form and get this life. And it is with the grace of God Almighty that we have the company of the Masters. Now we should make the most of that and follow the teachings of the Masters and make the efforts to go back to our true home. Morning time is ideal for meditation, but any time is good if we are sitting for meditation. That is why we should do our bhajan simran, our meditation, every day, and we should listen to satsang every day and fulfill the purpose of the life that has been given to us. Another passage from Baba Ram Singh. From the spiritual letters of Hadovich, a Beguine mystic from Antwerp, Belgium. Another one of those medieval mystics. The mystics are the spiritual cousins of one another. The Christian mystics, the Gnostics, the Sufis, the Sants of India. Kabbalah in Judaism. Hermetic mystics. The mystics are at the core of the world religions. The mystics are at the core and kind of blend into one in the center of that core, mystic core of world religions, and the mystic divine ground of being at the core of our being, entering into the interior life of the soul. From the spiritual writings of Hadovich. Loving God with his own love. God be with you, and may he teach you the true ways that belong to high love. For your part, be vigilant and discerning in what you are doing, attentive to yourselves and your quest, and firm in your faith. Provided you seek in truth, following not your own emotional attraction, but God's will, you shall obtain everything for which in his love he has destined for you. May God be to you vast and eternal love, and may he give you the wise life and the excellent virtue through which you may content his holy love. Work to this end every moment, without sparing, always be fervent in humility, and serve with wisdom. May God be your help and your consolation in your whole being, and may he teach you the veritable virtue by which we render love the most, honor, and justice. And finally today, another reading from a Maharashtrian saint, sometimes referred to as the Southern Saints, although they're not really that too far in the south. There are other saints further to the south in South India. But Maharashtra is a great place of saints, a long history of saints. In Praise of the Name by Eknath of Maharashtra. Repeating the name unravels all worry. With repetition, the fruit of all your works lands right in your hand. Salvation itself seeks you out and merges you into the One. Such is the greatness of repetition, of Simran, that it has carried across even the greatest offenders. It brings contentment. Ills of body and mind are canceled, and all of life's disorders are dismantled by repetition. Supreme success has come through repetition at my master's feet, says Eknath of Maharashtra on the practice of Manas Jap or Simran in praise of the name, the repetition of names of God. Mostly done mentally, but can also be done verbally to some extent, to help with concentration and letting one go within and doing a mental repetition, taking it within. The repetition of names of God, a key foundational spiritual practice of the Sant tradition of India. Thanks for joining me this week for Spiritual Awakening Radio.